So we have to overcome the fear of the unknown or what might be on the other side and really think about it from the perspective of, if I take charge of my life and my career, then I am in charge of it and I can find the right spaces and environments for me based off of what I want and need now in this part of my career.
We all want a workplace where we feel valued and supported, where you can bring your authentic self to work. But if you find yourself in a bad or even toxic workplace, making a change can be difficult. Do you know what to do or how to leave? And how do you get over all those feelings, actual trauma, from being in a bad situation and prevent it from happening again so you can find a new job that is a much better fit for you? Hi, this is Diana Bernal with Corner Office Latinas. I'm a career strategist who guides ambitious Latinas through major career moves so you can reach your goals. Today, I speak with Dr. Jasmine Escalera, a certified career and life coach who guides us through ways we can prevent a toxic environment and what to do if you find yourself in one. How do you get out of it, recover, and find the courage and confidence to be your fabulous self at work? Let's jump in. Hi, Jasmine. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Well, you and I are going to talk about how we can prevent landing in a toxic workplace or what to do if you find yourself in one. So before we jump in, why don't you help us define a toxic workplace versus a toxic boss? Because sometimes work can just be demanding or we can have a rough month, but what makes it toxic?
Yeah, so for me in my journey and in my career, I defined a toxic workplace as any environment at which I could not bring my full, whole, authentic self into that space and environment. So because of either their values misaligning with my values, or the fact that because I am a Latina in the career environment, very often the only in the room, I felt like I was almost kind of facing, the isms. So facing the sexism or oftentimes the racism. So just feeling as though, like, because of the work environment, because of the individuals in the work environment, I can't bring the fullest, most whole, authentic version of myself into the space. And so thus I am incapable of really being able to achieve the level of success I am seeking and looking for.
That's so true. And that's so important for us as we talk about authenticity. And I think women of color today are more comfortable being their authentic selves. But how do you tell in the interview process? I mean, let's start there. Like, how do you try and figure out if this is going to be a place that is supportive?
So what I always like to say is, so many of my clients will come to me and say, well, I have to leave this environment because it's toxic, or even more so because I have to leave this environment because I'm not feeling valued. And so what I always tell individuals is, when you are going into the job search process, finding the right supportive, healthy work environment for you is just as important as finding the right positions and opportunities. So it really starts first with you. What does being valued mean to you? What do you really need in order to feel supported in your next company and in your next environment? Based off of your past experiences, both good and bad, what do you want to see or not see within the next environment that you're in? And you have to really focus on getting confident enough in the interview process to be able to ask the right questions that align with your core needs and how you want to feel valued and supported. And there's even a deeper level to that, which is, before you even get in the interview process, doing your due diligence to have those networking conversations and to be chatting with individuals who maybe potentially work at the company or have worked at the company, to really be able to get the down low on what is it like to be in this environment and space based off of what I need to feel valued or to feel supported.
Yeah. And I always tell clients that the interview process is a two-way street. People forget that. You have value and you have something to offer. So you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. But sometimes we lack the confidence to think about that. Sometimes we lack the confidence to stand strong in what we want and try and get what we think we deserve in the marketplace. So how do you work with your clients on finding that confidence to go after what they're looking for?
Yeah, so the confidence piece is so important. So when we jump into a job search, oftentimes, especially now, we are jumping into that job search, potentially having being let go. Layoffs are a thing, a very big thing in the corporate space right now. Or we are going into the job search because we are unhappy or unsatisfied or unfulfilled in some aspect of our career. We traditionally don't leave workplaces if we feel like we are being valued and supported and we are fulfilled. So, what we'll do is we'll jump right into the job search, but we don't really dig into what are some of the negative things that I am actually taking into this job search. So, we have to actually take a little bit of a back step and take a moment to connect with our mindset, to connect with our thoughts, to connect with our feelings about what we feel with our career in general, what we've experienced, and what we're taking into this process. And what you want to be taking into the process is an empowered, confident mindset of I deserve. And with my clients, I have this really awesome exercise that they all do before they start the job search, which is to come up with I deserve statements that become daily affirmations and positive statements that they can make for themselves during the course of the job search to remind them of what they deserve. And those I deserve statements come from what they want next. I deserve to have a healthy work environment that supports me in these ways. I deserve to make this amount of money. So it's really about what do you want and flipping those into these empowering statements that kick you off into the job search with that more confident mindset and reconnecting back to that during the process. I tell my clients the job search process, I think, is one of the hardest processes in your career because you are facing massive rejection. You're putting yourself out there potentially in ways you haven't done so, right? You have to put yourself out there now on LinkedIn and do all these new things. It's a challenging process. So, having those anchor beliefs and those anchor thoughts that you can connect back to is really important as you navigate this process.
Well, I think that's so important to spend time up front because too often people say, oh, I don't like
Mhm.
it here. I want to just go find a new job. But before you do that, you really need to spend some time in reflection and identifying not just what you want to do, like
Yeah.
you said, the job title and the pay, but what type of space I want to be in, what type of flexibility, what type of authenticity am I bringing to the workplace?
Mhm.
And what is that going to look like, especially if they don't have it now? So let's talk about people who perhaps are in a situation where it doesn't feel right to them, whether they have a super demanding boss or there's this lack of authenticity, there's a disconnect for them. Is it worth it for them to try and fix things, perhaps to have some conversations first before deciding to quit?
I think so. Yeah, and that's actually the frontline question that I ask a lot of my clients when they come to work with me is have you been open and honest and communicated some of your needs to your company. And the reason for that is because no matter where you go, you always are, right? So we want to be the most confident and empowered version of ourselves in our career. And that means sometimes having very difficult conversations around what it is we need to feel supported and valued. So it's essential that we build up the confidence and also know the strategy for having these sometimes difficult conversations, or else you might just find yourself in another situation and then feel like always the solution is to leave.
Right.
Now, we caveat that, and I caveat that with if you feel like you're in an environment that truly is racist, sexist, and you are experiencing what I would consider a high degree of toxicity in the workplace, you should leave. That is not the kind of environment that you should be in. And likely no level of self advocacy is going to change that. But if you are in the kind of environment where you can assess, okay, can I have a real conversation with my manager? Can I sit down with someone and have a mediator to discuss this with me? Can I make these changes so that I am building my self advocacy tool set that I can take anywhere I go before I jump just right into the job search and think the solution is always to dip out?
Right. And that's where the grass is not always greener comes into place because
Right.
it could be worse in another place. And we also have to give the other person a little bit of credit, a little bit of benefit of the doubt that they may not have these bad intentions, that maybe they are making slip ups that they don't recognize. And I actually am thinking now of a situation I had several bosses ago where she used to just make comments about what I wore. And, a lot of us Latinas have this issue about image in the workplace. Is it okay to have the red nail polish and the red lipstick and the hoop earrings? And and I was wearing this red dress, of course, and it looked amazing. It was a wonderful red dress, but she made this comment about the color of my dress. And I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. She does this often. And I raised this with her and I sort of braced myself. And it was a very hard conversation, even though it's just about attire, but that's our identity, right?
Absolutely.
And I said, you make these comments all the time and it makes me feel really uncomfortable. Horrified. She was horrified. She didn't mean it. She was just trying to bond with me over something. And that was the thing that she was bonding over was attire, but she didn't realize how it had backfired. So I think
How
that
it was coming off.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so I think we need to make sure that if we can have a conversation, that we give them the benefit of the doubt, because otherwise we get stuck in those thinking traps and we assume the worst.
I agree.
So I think just giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. But like you said, then there are situations where that's it. Like there is no turning back. So what are some of the steps that women can take when they realize, you know what, I got to get out? I'm going to get out by the end of the month. But what are the things that they can do to prepare themselves for that big transition?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So, what I really like to think about first is what is it that you would like to do and achieve next in your career? Because even if you have to dip out of an environment because it's a toxic workplace, I still want you to be moving down your path, right? I want you to get closer to what it is that you want next. So, the first question really is what am I passionate about? What are my strengths? What am I interested in learning more of? What do I want to grow within? And to really consciously think about what's that position that pretty much entails that, right? Because the dynamic, fun, joyful position that you're going to feel attracted to is going to incorporate those aspects. And then I want you to think about also what kind of company do you want to work for, right? Based off of the different kinds of companies you've worked for in the past, what is that ideal company for you? But I think it's also important that we ask ourselves, what career stage am I in? Because this is really essential. When I was young in my career and I was fresh, I would take on all the work, all the challenges, all the projects, all the things.
Yeah.
And, later in my career, when I had my family and I had different priorities, I was definitely not the one who would raise my hand first. So I want you to also think about not just the job that is fulfilling, not just the company that really values you, but also where are you in life, right? Because we have to really think about our career as an aspect of that. It's an aspect of our lives and it has to feed that. So that's another really important thing because where you are in your life will potentially change the kinds of positions and also the kinds of environments you're searching for. If you're someone who wants that work-life flexibility, you're not going to look at startups, you're going to look at more established companies. So I want you to really kind of look at all of that. And once you have that idea, then you can start to work on the brand. What sometimes people do is they jump into the resume or jump into editing the LinkedIn profile, but you have to know what your target is. You have to know what you're branding to
Yes.
in order to really be able to create that brand.
Well, what I tell people too is that you're running to something, not running away from something. No matter how toxic it
Right.
is, you may feel like you're running away from it. But as you do that, try and think of what you're looking forward to, which is pretty much exactly kind of where you're guiding them.
110%.
Yeah.
We can jump so quickly into like, I'm going to brand myself. I'm going to have the perfect resume. I'm going to have had ChatGPT create it for me. But if you don't have that goal, like you're talking about, you're just basically putting accomplishments on a sheet of paper. You're not concisely creating what we would call a brand. And then, of course, we have to think about how the job search is very different now. The market is flooded. So just applying to positions doesn't work. You have to get into the networking. What I tell people is a flat white sheet of paper is not the dynamic you. You have to showcase who you are, what you do, the challenges you solve, and you need to get in front of people.
Yeah. And you have to be comfortable with the conversation. Let's talk about this because I often hear from
Mhm.
clients, like, let's say they left on May 1st. They couldn't take it anymore. They had to make a move. And a good practice is best you can to not leave a job until you have a new job. But what about those people who have left and then they get stuck with, oh my God, how do I explain the fact that I left a company without a job? That can be really hard for people to message across. So what's your input there?
Yeah, so if you have to leave a position because you simply cannot take it anymore, and many of my clients have done this before, when you're thinking about the interview process and you're talking about why you left, I think honesty is the best policy, right? You're never throwing an organization under the bus, you're never throwing a manager under the bus, but you're essentially talking about what you learned about yourself and
Mm,
about what you need in a company moving forward, and you connect that to what you know the company is providing. So if I am really looking for an organization that's more mission driven, that prioritizes work life balance, then I'm going to say that, and I'm going to pull from what I've learned from my networking conversations and the interview to showcase that that's the right space for me. So I'm going to talk about how, some coworker told me that the organization really does prioritize work life balance, and that is what really excites me. And I'm passionate about this organization because it's the mission that is central to my own heart, right? So I'm going to be honest, never throwing anyone under the bus and being professional, but I'm going to let the organization and the people know that they're what I want now because I've had this experience and I've learned more about myself. That's what life and your career is about.
oh, that gave me chills. That is so spot on. And I think two things come from this. One is the ability to practice this, because if it was awkward, you're going to need to practice saying this out loud, practice it with a friend or whoever, or talk into the mirror. So that way you actually believe and feel confident about what you're saying. But when you mentioned networking, it's something that we always go back to. And this targeted networking can be so effective because that connection that someone makes for you helps you get over that hurdle of why is she looking for a job and she already quit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many advantages to networking. And I think that, when I speak to job seekers, it's like, okay, I got to get in front of people because they're going to get me hired. Sure, that's one aspect of why networking is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might get in front of someone who's like, yeah, I'll pass your resume along or I'll make that connection. But that's one aspect of networking, right? Networking can help you to gather information about what it's really like to be in a company. Networking can also help you do what I love to talk about with my clients, market research. So if
Yes.
you don't know specifically the kinds of problems that the organization is solving or that this type of position or role is solving, and because you're making a career pivot, the networking can give you an idea on how to really brand and market yourself best because you're listening to industry experts and people talk about what they do, the problems and challenges they're solving, what it's like to work in the organization. And this is all data and information that you can funnel through yourself and ask yourself, how can I talk about me better? How can I talk about the problems that I solve better? How can I update my resume to be even more impactful? How can I switch up that interview question to really be able to bring some of this industry knowledge in a different way? So there's a whole nother reason that we can be doing networking that can actually advance our job search in a whole new way that we probably are not thinking about.
I think that's such great advice. Jasmine, back us up for a second. How did you get into this? Tell me about your journey.
Oh my goodness. I don't want to date myself.
We'll leave the years out.
I take a lot of good care of my skin,
That's
but
fabulous.
I started in STEM in academia 20 plus years ago. So when, we talk a lot about in the tech field and in the STEM field, there not being any, people of color, women of color, back in the day, there were no
Yeah.
women in STEM. And so I was one of the only women often at huge conferences. So I was in the STEM field and feeling like I had to conform, feeling like I wasn't being valued for what I could bring to the table, feeling like I had this entire life journey that was so different from everybody else in the space. And I almost like felt embarrassed for the fact that I grew up a certain way. And so I really started a very transformational healing journey in my career where I really started to rebuild back my confidence and started to say to myself, it doesn't matter if I'm the only one in the space. I'm going to claim who I am. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to self advocate because I was changing so much of myself that I was developing legit mental health issues in doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I went through that journey, I started to realize that so many other women were doing the exact same thing. They were the onlys in the spaces and conforming and not self advocating and not standing up for themselves. So I decided to help women because I felt like I needed the help, but to help women to be able to learn
Hmm.
these tools and to really be able to have the career they want their way and to not feel like I have to check these boxes to be successful, which is why I talk a lot about where are you in your life? What do you want out of this? What is really authentic to you? Not necessarily what everyone is telling you you should do in this space. So that was what was important for me. And that's really what I try to teach my clients is to have an authentic career that they create, success on their terms, and also to be able to really walk into the space as confidently as they really can each and every day.
Well, and how can some women kind of get themselves back up? Because if you are in a bad situation
Mhm.
at work, it is really brutal and you personalize that and you take it home with you. And just because you quit on May 1st doesn't mean that all that trauma has slipped away. So how can women who have gone through some type of traumatic, toxic situation sort of detox to get out of it and bring themselves back to who they are?
Yeah. So, what I always tell individuals is number one is grace and compassion to self, right? So, being super compassionate to yourself. If you've experienced toxic work environments or have experienced this feeling of like, I'm not being valued for whatever reason it is, you have to show yourself love. Because you're likely not getting that validation, that compassion from others in that space. So, grace and compassion first, and then also time. Healing and building back your confidence after these environments takes time. What we don't talk enough about is that toxic work environments induce trauma. It's traumatic.
Yeah.
And trauma totally changes our perception of ourselves, others, and the world. So, in order to get back to knowing who we are and trusting people again and trusting that we can find the right organization, we have to go through a healing process. And that healing process takes time, it takes compassion to self. It takes each and every day just trying your best to be 1% better than the day before in terms of your own mindset, right? How can I really just feel more confident today? How can I tell myself something really nice today? But healing is a process, especially after these environments.
And even if you get a new job tomorrow, you still have to give yourself the affirmations, the acknowledgments, because it will take time, like you said. So you can continue that process. Even when you land a new job, you might be really happy, but you have to remember that you're still carrying this baggage of what happened to you in the year before.
Yeah, absolutely. So the hardest job I ever started was the job after a toxic workplace, after an extremely toxic workplace. Because once the excitement and enthusiasm of getting the position wore off, I realized that I was terrified. I was terrified that it was going to happen again. I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to make it. And so you do have to really give yourself a lot of grace. The hardest position will be the one after this experience, but you can make it through.
Yeah, that is a really good point. So if someone is leaving a job, usually there are the mechanics that we need to get them ready for, especially if they're leaving a job with no job yet, right? So do you have 6 months of savings? Do you have your resume ready? Are you going through a process? Do you know who you're going to start networking with? Those are the mechanics. But for some people, they can get really attached to their old workplace. And this is as dysfunctional as it gets, right? We have these dysfunctional relationships all over the place, even though you realize this place isn't good for you. Maybe you are tied to it because of other reasons. Maybe your best friend works there. Maybe the benefits are amazing. Maybe they pay you so much money. It's hard to leave. So walk us through women who are attached to a job, even though they know they shouldn't, and they've got to try and pull themselves out.
Yeah, well, you know that saying, the devil you know, like it's better to just stay with the devil you know.
Yes,
Like that, I hate that. If there is anything in the world I would want to banish, that would be the one, like, oh my God, like
noted.
that is awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a fear mechanism, right? It's a fear based off of the unknown. So I don't know if the next job is going to be the same. I don't know how hard it's going to be to find a job. Oh my gosh, everybody on LinkedIn is talking about how they were applying to hundreds of positions. Like there's a fear mechanism based off of that. And so what I really like to do is I like to tell women, well, if you empowered yourself to collect all the data that you could, if you empowered yourself to think about what your needs were and you really thought about, okay, is this the right space for me? If you did the job search completely different, could you get a completely different outcome? And the answer is yes, you can get a completely different outcome. So we have to overcome the fear of the unknown or what might be on the other side and really think about it from the perspective of, if I take charge of my life and my career, then I am in charge of it. And I can find the right spaces and environments for me based off of what I want and need now in this part of my career.
Amen. Amen to that. So we've talked about how to prevent this situation. And one of the things you mentioned was research. What else can women do to look out for the red flags, maybe in the interview process or somewhere along the way, that can help them prevent this situation?
So this might not be like a data centric thing. So I'm a scientist at heart, but I call myself a spiritual neuroscientist because I really am a very spiritual being just as much as I am a very data centric, give me the data, I want to see the numbers
Excellent. You
person.
can be both.
You can be both. There's something that we miss a lot, and that is listening to our gut. So I can actually go back and I can tell you that I knew in every single position that I was in where there was a problem, that there was going to be a problem. But I didn't listen to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the questions I really like to ask women when they come to work with me, especially after toxic work environments, was there ever a point during the process, during the interview process, during the getting to know everyone, or even right in the first few days or moments where you were like, oh, hell, that's what we need to also be tapping into. So my advice is do the networking, ask the questions up front, and get to know the company before you even get on the phone or the Zoom call or walk through their doors for an interview. When you're in the interview, feel empowered to ask the right questions and then listen to your gut. If something's off, if you're getting a weird vibe, it doesn't mean you have to run out the door, but it could be that you just need to do a gut check. Is there another question I need to ask? Do I maybe need to talk to someone else? I really am not feeling so great about this piece. Maybe I should ask if I could talk to a coworker or someone who held the position before me. So it might just be that the gut check is telling you not to run out the door. Sometimes it is,
Yeah.
but not to run out the door, but to add another layer of questions or self-assessment for you. So you have to listen to that.
Yeah, you have to follow your gut. I'm such a big fan of that as well. And don't rationalize. Women fall into this trap all the time. They're eager. Let's say they're desperate. They feel desperate, but hopefully if they've done some of this work about the grounding and the why and what do I want in this season of my life, they can stay grounded in their ultimate destination. But too often I hear the desperation in their voice to take that job, to settle for something that they shouldn't. So, part of it is having that financial cushion so that you don't settle. But part of it is your own mentality that no, I can keep going. I can keep looking for that match that's right for me and not settle just because I feel like I need to make this move so urgently.
Yeah, I love that. I totally agree. I think that as a society, not even just women, but as a society, we're taught much more to be heady, to think with our heads. And I was trained as a scientist. So that's where a lot of my first few years in academia and in my career really came from. But what I've learned more of is there's this beautiful balance between what's going on in your head and what's going on in your body. And listening to those two things and really finding that beautiful balance of what is my head telling me, what is my heart telling me, where can we meet in the middle, is a really great way to think about all strategies in our lives and in our careers. And we have to think more from that space of our gut and our body as well. And as women, I think we just naturally have these gifts of intuition,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to use those more. And we step into these professional spaces and we strip ourselves of those gifts. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to use those gifts as your gifts in every single aspect of your life, especially your career. Don't turn it off. Listen to it.
And if you are authentic and follow those gifts, then you will be successful in the workplace because you are thriving, because you are using whatever those skills and gifts are that you have. You feel rewarded for it. You do well. The cycle continues. It's just a snowball effect there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really, I do believe, and this is more of the spiritual woo-woo side of me, but I do believe that we come into this space to be the success that we want to be. And we are the ones that are holding ourselves back. So if we can tap into more of reflection, more of asking ourselves deeper questions, more of asking ourselves what it means to be authentic, building that confidence to just show up how we want to show up in that powerful way, and tap into more of that intuition, I do believe we would slay in our careers. So sometimes we just have to take ourselves out of the way and tap back into that.
That is brilliant advice. And I think this also reminds us that we need to give ourselves the time to do these things. We need to set aside time, whether it's once a week on a Sunday, to do the reflections or to do whatever it is that brings you back into balance. So that way you have the
Yeah.
freedom to think and you can follow your gut and you are more in tune to what is happening. So this has been so helpful. I feel like I've had my own therapy session. So thank you, Dr. Escalera.
Oh, great.
What other final thoughts, final tips for people to walk away with?
Yeah. So, final tips: if you are in a toxic work environment, it's time to go. One of the things that I remember having an interview with someone months ago, and she said, no one's coming to save you.
Yeah.
And I think that that is really powerful for us to remind ourselves, is that we are our own saviors. We are our own, princess on the white horse. Like, we are our own person to really be able to own this space. So if you're in a toxic work environment, please know that it's time to go. And you don't have to leave tomorrow without anything lined up. You can start the exit plan. And even just starting the exit plan is going to make you feel more empowered, where so much more of what you're dealing with will be able to roll off your shoulders, because it's only a matter of time before you get to the next thing that's best for you.
And it's also a reminder for everyone, even if you are in a really good situation, to keep connected to your network, to keep connected to people that you used to work with, because you never know when a new boss comes in or the company is purchased and all of a sudden overnight, things can change. And so you want to be ready in case it does happen to you, maybe down the road, that you need to pursue something else. So if it's good, lean into it, but always kind of be ready for what could happen the next day.
Yeah, I love that. I love saying, stay ready so you never have to get ready.
Love it. That's a good bumper sticker. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there. But Jasmine, this has been so helpful. Where can people find you?
I am always on the LinkedIn streets. Like, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can check out my LinkedIn profile, and I am in my DMs. So please feel free to DM me if you have any questions about a toxic work environment that you're in, or how to create or generate this exit plan that we talked about. We gave some strategies today, but please feel free to shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to talk to anyone, especially if it's about getting out of these environments and getting you into a healthy, supportive work environment.
Well, I'm going to include a link to your profile in the show notes. Thank you again, Jasmine, for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. For more, visit cornerofficelatinas.com. where we give you the framework, inspiration, and support you need to reach and thrive in the corner office. We have some free downloads on the website, where you can also sign up for our e-news so we can keep you posted on workshops and events coming up that you will not want to miss. That's cornerofficelatinas.com. See you next week.